How's it going, you all?
And welcome to B-Bros. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier introduced to us the new Captain America, not John Walker, but Isaiah Bradley.
We met Isaiah amongst the conversation between him, Bucky, and Sam, but didn't really get a lot of information.
In this video, we will focus on the comic origin of Isaiah Bradley
and how it might translate into the MCU. Isaiah Bradley's first comic appearance and origin story dates back to 2003. Truth, Red, White, and Black is a 7-issue limited series that re-examines the history of the super soldier serum that created Captain America. American government experiments on 300 African American men to create more super soldiers in order to help the efforts of the World War II. Only person to walk out alive from those experiments is Isaiah Bradley.
Isaiah's fate is not as glamorous as Steve Rogers. American government believes the world is not ready for an African American Captain America yet. So, they do not introduce him to the public, which also includes not giving him his own Captain America uniform.
Isaiah takes the matters into his own hands and decides to wear the uniform anyways. Even though he is successful with his missions, American government believes stealing the shield and the uniform is not an excuse and give a life sentence to him. Isaiah is released from prison after 17 years.
If you think about how Steve Rogers becomes Captain America in the MCU when he takes matters into his own hands to single-handedly save hundreds of soldiers, and compare it to how Isaiah Bradley is treated for doing the same thing, you can see the poor treatment and injustice towards Isaiah. We would suggest you to check the whole comic in order to learn Isaiah's story in more detail, but this is all we need to know right now.
The new question is, how will this relate to the MCU? We know that in the MCU, Isaiah is born in 1930s and becomes a super soldier a decade later than his comic book story in 1950s, the Korean War instead of the World War II. Isaiah Bradley was also running low in his missions and was not a public figure like Captain America was. Only mission that we know of him in the MCU is the one where he faces the Winter Soldier in Goyang, Korea.
The Soviet Union and Hydra was using the Winter Soldier to have an edge over the United States in the Korean War, but Isaiah prevents him. He apparently ripped half of Bucky's arm, which is more impressive than ripping it from the top.
After this encounter, Bucky goes back to sleep while Isaiah lives on, which makes the next part a bit more blurry. We do not know exactly when the US government and also Hydra, which infiltrated the government, locked him up to run experiments on him. Also, we do not know if there is a reason like in the comics behind Isaiah's punishment. Marvel did not really touch upon the social injustice aspect of life before the second episode of The Falcon and The Winter Soldier, so we wonder how further they will introduce it to us.
Let's continue Isaiah's story with the facts we have. After the Korean War, which ends in 1953, Isaiah is locked up at one point. We assume it was before the Vietnam War, just because we think America would have won that comfortably if they had a Captain America fighting. Maybe the reason why he was locked up is because he refused to serve in Vietnam, as that was an unjust war.
After Isaiah's imprisonment, Hydra ran experiments on him for 30 years. There's a good chance his experiments are linked with the super soldiers we have seen in the flashback scenes in Civil War. Hydra might have wanted to perfect the serum before using it again, as their result so far has been unpredictable.
After Isaiah's release, he probably went to Baltimore. You might be wondering how he has a grandson. In the comics, prior to enlisting, Isaiah has a wife. If the stories are matched, his wife might have been pregnant before the time Isaiah was locked up, which would explain the grandson, Eli Bradley.
A little more information about Eli. In the comics, he is one of the founding members of the Young Avengers. He claims that his grandson's genes are passed on to him, which makes him a super soldier as well. Of course, he was lying and using power-enhancing drugs instead, but eventually he has a blood transplant from Isaiah that makes him an actual super soldier.
More members of the Young Avengers are Wiccan and Speed, the children of Wanda and Vision. Marvel might decide to use these characters in the future. The last question of the day is, will Isaiah Bradley help Sam and Bucky in their mission to stop the Flag Smashers? 3 groups are on the hunt for the Flag Smashers. the US government and John Walker, Sam and Bucky, and the unknown people who got the closest to catching the Flag Smashers and killed one of the super soldiers. Sam and Bucky can have the edge they need to stop the Flag Smashers if Isaiah helps them, especially to find the roots of the super soldier serum.
We know the serum was found in Germany by Hydra, and first experiments were run on the Red Skull. Then Steve Rogers becomes Captain America. We know that Bucky is injected with the serum as well as Isaiah Bradley and many other soldiers during the Cold War. We thought the serum was no longer available until we saw the Flag Smashers. We know how dangerous super soldiers can be and how much damage they can cause. Hopefully, Isaiah will help Sam and Bucky to stop them.
We hope this background information about the second Captain America, Isaiah Bradley, is helpful.
The Falcon and the Winter Soldier does a good job of showing the social injustices that took place and still take place.
So far in the MCU, we did not have much time to explore anything than the main story.
But with Disney Plus series, we now have more time to spend on subtopics.
This is it for this week. We will be back with more content next week.
Until then,
Be bros out.